Welcome to Ask Me Anything, featuring spiritual medium and psychotherapist Kellee White.
Hi, everybody. Oops. Well, hi there, guest. I think we're going to put you back in the closet for a second, or maybe not. I'm not sure. Maybe you're just out of the closet.
I'll wait patiently.
You wait patiently. Okay, that's really funny. Well, everybody, that's our surprise guest. Hi, everybody. I'm spiritual medium Kellee White, and today is October 21st, 2021, and welcome to Ask Me Anything. We have a special guest tonight. You'll never guess who it is. So let me say hi to everybody. Hi, Lisa G. She's patiently waiting. Hi, Renee Martinez. How are you, honey? Haven't seen you in a long time. Hey, Jessica. Hey, Vicky. Hi, Arlene from Fort Worth. Gotta love that. Hey, Julie. Hey, Charlene. Kim Ann, I am going to answer your question, Kim Ann, about you had a great question. You asked about the full moon yesterday and babies being born. Yesterday was a very powerful full moon. It was the Hunter's full moon in Aries, and it was a huge deal. You asked about when babies are born during a full moon, or particularly last night's full moon. And I'll say this, they pack a punch. Those babies come in with a big mission. All babies that are being born right now are here for a big mission, and we all choose our time and place and astrological chart before we come in. So they would have chosen that with great intention. It would bring them a lot of power. They probably end up being lawyers or something. It's a big deal. That was a big deal yesterday. Hey, Shannon from Georgia. Oh gosh, hello to you and all of your family. Hi, Beth from Michigan. Oh my gosh. Hi, Wendy. Hey, Gloria. It is a cool night. Gloria lives near me in Wisconsin, and it is a cool, cool night, which I'm starting to love. We're going to have a fire in the fireplace over the weekend. It's going to be great. Hi, Kelly. Hi, Marge. Hi, Jan. Hey, Lillian. Oh, Lillian near Palm Springs. Hey, Lillian, how are you? Judy Freeman, my old dear friend. Hi, Judy. Hi, everybody. Well, anyway, I could just keep going on and on. I get caught up in that, and then I hyper focus on that, and I forget I'm doing a show. So let's talk a little bit about astrology, just a minute before we bring on our secret guest. You'll never guess. Anyway, just want to mention, we had that big full moon yesterday, and it was a very intense week. It will remain an intense week, okay, because we have a lot of other aspects going on. And I know that this is a big time for transformation, okay? People's lives are changing as we speak. This is a time for people, babies being born, people passing away, illness, move, job changes. It's really a big, big month. And on in 2 days, the sun goes into Scorpio. So that's when the sun is in Scorpio. Scorpio is all about transformation. As I just said, it's about change, getting ready for a change. It brings renewal, and it means to take necessary action. So this is where we're headed. But I do want to mention that tomorrow, Mars squares Pluto. So that's going to be intense. So tomorrow we're going to step into an intense day. Okay. So remember, it can be kind of volatile. So just remember, count to 10, think before you act, try not to get into an emotional state, if you can, which is, Renee taught me this, observe with detachment. Best thing that you could ever learn to do. And on October 26th, so I think that's next Monday, Venus squares Neptune. And that's could bring some issues in relationships, some confusion in relationships. So these are kind of some of the things that are coming up in the next few days. But having said all of that, I've got some great questions that people have written, and I really appreciate those questions. They're really great. And today we have a special guest, and I want to tell you a little bit about our special guest. Okay, I'll tell you his name. His name is Bill Cinque, and I've known Bill for many years now. And Bill is an extraordinary musician. He's a bass player, plays the guitar. He's an incredible singer. And I met him when he joined Neil Diamond's band a few years ago. And he's a dear friend of all of ours. And in fact, he was one of the last people to play as a bass player with Ron Tutt Ron Tutt was Neil Diamond's drummer and Elvis's drummer. And I have to say Jerry Garcia's drummer too. But Bill was one of the last people to play with him. So he's going to mention that. We're going to talk about that for a couple of minutes. And Bill also does our voiceovers for James's show that James and I do together, and then for my show today. He's really interested, really talented. But after when Neil retired, it's interesting how people can make changes in their life and things that they want to do. So always remember that. I mean, this is such a great message for everybody. Now you're going on to your next road. What's the next road say? What's the next thing you're going to do? So he went back to school and he became a hypnotist. And he's really extraordinary as a hypnotist. He was an extraordinary musician. He is still, and he still plays and performs, I should say, all over the world. But he's an extraordinary hypnotist. And when he's going to talk to you about, what it's like, the experiences that he's had and how it works. And if you've had he says, if you've had fear, stress, anxiety, pain, and self-doubt, that keep you from your goals, this may be a really good thing to do. Okay. So I'd love to welcome our dear friend, Bill Cinque.
Well, thank you, Kellee.
Bill.
How are you?
Good. How are you? And welcome.
Thank you very much. It's my pleasure to be here. Every time I do your show, I try to find a different shade of purple to where
That's a good shade. That's a good shade.
I do what I can. I'm running out. I might have to move on to bluer.
Oh my God. No, I thought before we even get into the past life regression, which I know everybody's excited about, do you think you could tell a couple minutes about Ron Tutt and your relationship with Ron?
Yeah, I could talk for 6 hours about Ron. As Kellee mentioned, I had the tremendous fortune of working with Neil Diamond, and Neil Diamond's band from top to bottom. There's a great multi-instrumentalist called Don Marquis, who you might be familiar with, who is really one of my great friends. He's the greatest musician I've ever worked with.
Oh.
Up and down the line, everybody in the band was stellar. And leading the whole show was a drummer by the name of Ron Tutt. Now, Ron is famous in every circle, and for drummers, he's the Elvis of drummers. He's not only Elvis's drummer, he was the Cadillac of drummers. Ron kind of took me under his wing in the very sense that I was in this brand new environment. I got just dropped in out of the sky. They had a different bass player who, I should say, great guy, great player by the name of Riney Press. And Riney retired after 45 years, and I dropped in out of nowhere. And that's like having a new dance partner. That's a big deal. It's nothing casual. It's not easy to deal with. It's emotional. It's physical. It's a lot of stuff, not just musical. And Ron Tutt, being the incredible person that he is, above and beyond being a musician, he made the transition easy for me. So speaking of easy transitions, I'm hoping he's having one now, because Ron passed away the other day, passed over. He is just the biggest influence musically on me, because I like to say Ron put me on the map. And what I mean by that is, when you play with somebody of Ron's stature, to other musicians, they kind of look at that as, oh, you've arrived. Oh, if you played with Ron, you must be better than the average bear, right? So Ron meant a great deal to me, and I won't even say past tense. He, to this moment, means a great deal to me. I love him dearly. We all do. We're all going to miss him. By the same token, anytime you want to get the spirit of Ron, just play Burning Love by Elvis, right? That's all you need to do. All you need to do is go to YouTube and put on 500, YouTube videos of Ron with Elvis. If you do it for the last 5 or 6 years, you'll see me and Don and Tom Hensley and a lot of the other guys that were there. So I would say that if everybody here is of the mind of saying hello, as opposed to saying goodbye, I would say hello to Ron Tutt right now.
Oh, bless your heart. Well, we are, and I'm hopefully Ronnie is listening.
Oh, I don't
Unless
doubt
he's
that.
probably with Elvis right now. What can we
Yeah,
say?
yeah.
You know. But I thank you for that. That was beautiful,
Well,
and
thank you for
I
the opportunity. Yeah.
just, like you, it just adored him too. So, but let's talk about what you're doing now and hypnosis and what it involves and
Yeah. Just to kind of get off and running, um, hypnosis is changing my life as well as me changing other people's lives. Um, I found that the idea of kind of changing somebody's belief system, meaning their negative belief,
Mhm.
can be so incredibly impactful. And often use the term simple but not easy, meaning, well, it's a straight line. You have a lot of anxiety. Well, let's clear it up. Well, that part's simple, but the practice is difficult. It's not easy. Um, Most people have a terrible misconception of what hypnosis is. And I think we covered some of this last time, but essentially it's speaking to the subconscious, and it's getting rid of uh, some of your blockage, some of the hurdles that you, somewhere in your mind, in your conscious mind, you know that you're not going to fall off that balcony.
Mm.
Somewhere in your conscious mind, you're aware of the fact that smoking cigarettes is bad. Why is it that you still smoke, or you're still afraid to go up on that balcony? If you have a fear of heights, or so, you have to go into the subconscious and kind of untangle that. So this has led me to a lot of just extraordinary cases, some of which I've mentioned before, some of which are on my website if anybody cares to go and take a look at that. And rather than be repetitive, I don't mind telling you, I checked with my client yesterday, uh, and asked if it was okay if I share this, keeping confidentiality. But this is how far reaching hypnosis can be. Uh, One of my clients is an agoraphobic. She hadn't left the house, without making this a very long story, she hadn't left the house in about 3 years, in the sense that
Wow.
she, the best she could do is have somebody drive her to the store that was a mile away.
Mm.
Um, I started working with her a few months ago. She was getting better and better, and we were having progress on top of progress. So it wasn't at all. We didn't hit any snags. And the day before yesterday, I did a session with her, and she went driving by herself for an hour.
Wow, that's
Now,
amazing.
this is somebody. What we were doing is we were gauging her progress.
Mm.
In the month of, I guess it was August, she went out 12 times.
Wow.
And what we figured out was, for the 3 years prior, she left the house a total of 12 times.
Hmm.
And then in one month
Wow.
went that, and then the other day.
Wow.
So the agoraphobic part is something that most people don't think about.
You're absolutely right. I mean, when I think about hypnosis for sending somebody, I think, of course, I think now past lives, but
Hmm.
I also would think, anxiety, fear of flying, those kind of things.
Right, and all of those
Weight
are
loss.
certainly, yeah, and they're all on the menu. The reason I think we're talking today is there's the stuff that's a little outside the box.
Yeah.
Uh, I've been dealing with an actor who, this is the other interesting part of hypnosis that some people don't think about. Um, Everybody jumps to the negative side, right? You have a fear of flying, or you're overweight, or you're afraid of dogs, or all these
Hmm.
kind of things. Um, Fear of success is an interesting thing.
Yeah, I bet. Yeah.
And with, again, I have to keep confidentiality, but this client of mine came to me and said that they have extreme anxiety because they're getting so much great work.
Interesting. Yeah.
Sometimes they feel like they don't deserve it. Now, again, not in the conscious mind.
Hmm.
Um, so the idea of hypnosis just unlocking doors, uh,
Yeah.
is pretty deep. It's far-reaching. It goes into topics that most of us, including myself, would never have understood that these doors even existed. Didn't even know that there was a door there. The difference between fear of driving and fear of traffic and fear and claustrophobia are all different things. Fear of accidents is different. Fear of being on a bridge, which is called gyphrophobia, is different than a fear of heights.
I found out that one the hard way. I was actually doing the bridge climb in Australia.
Yeah, I know exactly what you're talking about.
With a friend who, as we pulled up in the taxi, she turned to me and she said, "Oh, I better tell you something. I have a fear of bridges." I said, "Well, for God's sakes, you should have let me know before we paid $300 to do this."
Yes, exactly. Exactly. These are different. These are all different things. And when you treat it with hypnotherapy, it turns into a very interesting thing because you watch people essentially answer their own questions.
Wow.
This is not me sitting on top of the mountain being the wise man. I tell people I'm more like the Uber driver. I'm just taking you where you
Well,
need to go.
it's really very interesting because one of the questions that I was asked when we were talking, because we're going to go into past lives, but one of the questions I was asked, which I found so interesting, is this something that I have to read this because it was such a good one. Have you ever had there were two of them. Is it better for somebody to tell you, like as a medium or a psychic, that you've had a past life, or is it better for them to have the experience? And I always say it's better to have the experience. Always better to have the experience because that person could be wrong and could set you up for a big trouble there. So I've always been a big believer if you're really wanting to have some past life experience, don't listen to anybody else, just do it yourself. Go into somebody like Bill or somebody that does this because I think it's more important actually. And the other question that I had is, has ever a past life regression feel like it did more harm than good to a person's psyche? And again, I want to answer that very carefully because if you're not, yeah, if you're open to doing something like that, it all depends on what's going on with your psyche at the time. So if your psyche is full of fear and anxiety, I probably would not do this. I'd probably see a therapist first.
Mhm. Oh, I mean, absolutely. I mean, under these circumstances, the idea of someone thinking they might be from another place and time,
Hmm.
that's nothing new.
Right.
That's nothing new. And as far as you saying, their experience,
Mhm.
I had an interesting thing just the other day, and a client of mine who I've been working with for a while wanted to delve into the past life experience, the past
Mm.
life regression. And she said to me, I'm very open and I'm ready to go and I'm excited to do this. And she said, something tells me that I lived in the Middle East, in 2,000 years ago. She said that. I don't know where she got that from, but okay. Well, we start going, well, it went deep
Mhm.
and it went for a while. And essentially, it was nothing like that. It was nothing about what she
Interesting.
thought. It turned into, she was in, I think it was 18th century France.
Hmm.
And she was describing her parents and what she was doing. And she was going to visit a relative who was dying. And so it was an interesting lesson for both of us in the
Mhm.
sense that what you thought while you were daydreaming
Right.
is that's your own thoughts. I'm not going to police that. I'm not going to tell you you're wrong, but that does not necessarily mean that that's what we're
Well,
going to wind up with.
you never know where you're going to wind up with because we would have had more than one life. So it would have been
Yeah.
several lives that you might tap into this one. And then maybe that's the more important one at this moment. But
Yes, exactly.
it's really interesting. So let's talk about the difference between how you said we talked earlier with age regression
Hmm.
taking you then later the next step after that would be past life.
Yeah. What I try to do is when I'm doing this, I set it up into 3 stages.
Okay.
And the first thing is, I kind of have to laugh if I say traditional hypnosis because I don't know that there is such a thing, but just the basic breathing deep and progressive relaxation and maybe getting into that zone where you can kind of float away and you can relax and um, that kind of thing. Now, if I were to call that stage one, it might even be session one. As to how long it goes is up to the client. But age regression, I've had some incredible experiences with. And the idea of age regression is if we have that person who is afraid of something, they're afraid of traffic, they're afraid of being alone, they're afraid of dogs, whatever it might be. We have to figure out why that's happening. Now, what happened? Can you remember something that you had a bad experience? Did you ever fall off a balcony? Did you ever, uh, were you ever bitten by a dog? Whatever these things were, and people say no. Now, initially they say no. Sometimes when we do the age regression, we get back to that spot where, well, when I was a child, and sometimes it's when they're very young, when they're 5, they never got bit by a dog. But when they would go over to their grandmother's house, on the other side of the fence, there was a big dog that would bark and jump up and scare them.
Oh.
Now, the reason this is important, the reason I give you that example, is if some big dog bit you, well, that would be a pretty obvious connection.
Mm-hmm.
What I try to get people to realize is that trauma takes on a whole different definition when you're talking about a 5-year-old.
Yeah.
Being
Absolutely
scared,
does.
yeah, the dog barking on you probably
Right.
didn't even see the dog. You imagine that it was this,
Mm-hmm.
huge thing. Um, High school age, a 12-year-old boy who
Yeah.
didn't get picked for the basketball team.
Mm.
That sounds like a no big deal to an adult, but to that 12-year-old boy, it was trauma. Now that 12-year-old boy grew up and he might be a CEO of some international company. That's not the point. Doesn't matter how successful he is now. He still has fears that are rooted in that. So when we go backwards in the age regression, we touch on some of those things that seem insignificant
Mm-hmm.
and turns out they're very significant. And when we bring that to light, it does kind of loosen up those tangles in your
Yeah.
subconscious.
So if you have done age regression, and then how does it work? Because I know with many lives, many masters, I have to bring this up with
Mhm.
Brian Weiss, and he really began this years ago, and how he was working with he was a psychiatrist, and how he was working with a client or patient, and then it just slipped into a past life. So I'm wondering, when people come to see you, you start off with an idea of one thing, and then maybe it would slip into a past life? Or tell me how you work when you do a past life regression. What's if somebody calls in and says, Bill, I'm going to have a session for past life?
Yeah, that's pretty much how it starts. Is that
Okay.
I don't think I've ever recommended somebody do it.
Okay.
They almost always ask me, and what we do is, as I said, I try to get them to that first stage of again traditional hypnosis. I take them back through going backwards, and we get to that point where I say, well, we've gone back to high school, we've gone back to grammar school, we've gone back to when you were 4 years old. Can we go any further?
Ah, okay.
And I, it's imperative that you do not lead that person. I don't say,
Right.
"Oh, are you living in the old west? Are you living in Brazil? Are you wearing these clothes?" I don't do that. You can't do that.
Right.
I let them
Mm-hmm.
lead the way, and I'll just ask, "Well, what time do you think it is? What's the weather like? Are you in
Mm.
the ocean? Are you by the ocean? Are you by the mountains?" Um, and the one I had recently, I barely had to ask any questions. It was so vivid for them.
Wow.
It came pouring out, and it does come to, if I can use the word conclusion, I guess I'll put it in air quotes, but if I were to say conclusion, when you realize that when you go backwards and you tap into some of those memories, the idea is you got there however you got there, whether it was fast or slow. You arrived at this point, and we look at that and say, well, wait a minute. I had this vision that I was again on a balcony in 1856 and the building collapsed.
Right.
Okay. I jumped out of an airplane in World War One. I mean, who knows that it's endless. So what happens is there's a phrase. This is not my phrase, but that imagination is the language of the subconscious.
Mm.
And if I may just kind of dovetail this, one of the things, a couple of the things that I'd love your audience to know is that there are so many misconceptions about past life regression. The idea is it's really not trying to convince somebody that you've been reincarnated. It's really not about that. It's about, if we got to that point, and I can tell you I have gotten there. I've gotten there with people, and it's been amazing. You get to that point, and suddenly they're not afraid of height anymore. You get to that point where they realize they don't have to be anxious, and they stop smoking. So at that point, I keep saying at that point because there really is a turning point. It's you made a U-turn. At that point, you realize that these people have unlocked the mystery.
And that's what's important for them. Yeah.
Yeah.
There's a question here. Maria Carp Diem says, does it matter how long a regression session is in order to heal or release a fear?
That's a great question. I know other people who do this, that they will advertise that their sessions sometimes go for 3 hours.
Wow.
I don't do that, but I'm not criticizing the people who do. What I come to is this. It usually goes more than an hour.
Okay.
But what I do notice is, just to be clear, the client is completely in control when we're doing this.
Okay.
And sometimes it's very conversational. It's you can be at a shallow depth of trance. So the last thing I want is for someone to be making progress and getting into this and looking at their clock in their head saying, the babysitter is only going to be there for another 20 minutes. I have to get out of here. Or, let's wrap this up because of this traffic, because we have traffic. So what I try to do is I try to keep it to about an hour and 15 minutes. Okay. I have not had any issues with things going too long or too short. I think there is a way to kind of draw a line and say, okay, we've had enough for today. We'll pick it up next time.
Right.
I hope that answered the question.
Yeah, no, it does answer the question. And Beth Glomsky makes a good point. She said, does it matter if your phobia came from a past life or from a current life? And my thought on that is I would always start with this life first. And so possibly maybe with Bill do an age regression, right?
Yeah.
And to see, does it pop up in any of those circumstances? And if not, I would think that your subconscious would just keep going, opening them that door, as Bill talked about.
Yeah, that's exactly why I go in the sequence that I do. It's not haphazard. I mean, it's scripted in the sense that we start from being in a relaxed state. We start from a spot where you can communicate with yourself, with your subconscious. As we start going back, there are people that it's almost like you gave them an electrical shock. When they get to certain parts, they'll jump. You'll see them physically. They gasp when they get to certain spots in this lifetime.
Wow. I bet.
Yeah, that there's things that they forgot about. And what that sometimes does is it triggers those other memories. Now, as to how often or how quickly, that remains to be seen. We could never really script that out. Sometimes it happens in 15 minutes.
Wow, that's amazing. Joanne Wilson has a question, and so does Susie Wright. It's the same question. How common is it not to be able to be hypnotized? Great question.
The general idea is that anyone can be hypnotized. Now, I don't know that you can be hypnotized against your will. In essence, if I'm trying to prove you wrong as a hypnotist and I say, okay, you can't hypnotize me, I don't know if that's going to work.
Right.
But I can give you a much better real world example. And that example would be me. And I hope my good friend Jeanette is watching, because Jeanette is also a hypnotist. And she was working on me one day, and we were trying what we call a script, which is, you know, just the basic idea of you're floating on clouds and things. And I might have even mentioned this before. I was thinking halfway through it, 5 minutes into it, this is not going to work. This is ridiculous. This is boring. Essentially, I'm too smart for this. That was probably what I was thinking.
Mhm.
But because Jeanette is a gifted hypnotist, she used a couple of buzzwords, and I was gone.
Oh, that's amazing.
Gone. I was gone for 20 minutes, and when I woke up, I couldn't believe,
Wow.
how deep I was. So the idea is, sometimes we kind of equate it to an egg. It's a
Mhm.
hard shell, but when you crack it,
It's
you're
very
in.
true.
And
It's
I
very
am
true.
a perfect example of that. That there's a lot of people out there that think they can't be hypnotized, but I can speak from experience as someone who's been hypnotized 3 or 4 times in a day.
Wow.
Yes,
Wow. Oh, I bet because training, I'm sure.
sure.
So Paula Powers asked a great question. She said, while past lives are interesting, can you glean information on challenges in this life or head for our soul? Which is a really great question. So if somebody's working with you, can they glean onto some idea of challenges why they would have challenges?
Well, I think that might be, if I'm understanding the question correctly, it's that same the same reason why we do things in the order that we do, right? We go from the basic to the age regression. Uh, to be clear, sometimes you unravel
Ah,
something that you
yeah.
didn't even see coming, right?
Hmm.
Now, what I mean by that is you'll say, yeah, I have this anxiety, and I will keep using the fear of heights just because it's easy to visualize. And you're thinking that maybe it's because when I was a kid, I used to go over my friend's house, and there was no railing on the stairs, and it used to scare me. Okay, well, that might be
Right.
part of the issue. But then we go past that, and you find out that maybe there's something deeper. Now, whether it's in 4 years before that in this life, or memories from God knows where, um, one sometimes triggers the other. You follow that thread,
Hmm.
and it might bring you to other stuff that you hadn't even thought about, that you weren't aware of.
Right. That's very true. That's very true. Um, I have this Poonam Kato, I don't know if I'm saying her name correctly, said, can we relive the same traumas through different lifetimes? And the answer is yes, absolutely. And until we get it through whatever our lesson is that we were supposed to learn. So I really wanted to get to that, whatever our lesson is. Arlene Dueber says, can this be done via Zoom? Oh, there you go. And Lillian Wong says the same thing.
Oh, I work through Zoom every single day, several times a
Yeah.
day. That's most of my clientele. Um, an interesting thing that's worth mentioning is the obvious thing about Zoom is it started out with COVID, where people didn't want to be in the same room.
Right.
And then the second part of it is, well, now you can see people all over the country and all over the world.
Yeah.
But for me, there's a really important part of this, and it was a surprise to me. Doing it by Zoom, I think, is actually more effective, because you being in your comfortable chair, on your
Hmm.
couch, even in bed with headphones, you don't have to get in the car and drive to my office. You don't have to worry about that
Right.
stuff. You don't have to put on shoes. I
Right.
encourage people, put on your fuzzy slippers, make yourself, this is supposed to be about comfort and relaxation.
Right.
Why would you go through the trouble of leaving work early, or putting on makeup, or hitting traffic? We get so much done because you're already starting in a better environment. So I would prefer Zoom, even if you live next door.
Right.
I would say do the Zoom. Yeah.
So this is an interesting comment. Barb Kennedy says, I didn't have a driver's license until I saw myself die in 1954 at the age of 16. Whew. That's something to see. The next week, I was offered a job traveling. I no longer had panic attacks behind the wheel, and within 3 weeks, I had a license, a new car, a new job, and a deeper understanding. So that's where a past life regression would have helped you a great deal. Thank you for sharing that, Barb. That's amazing. So Kim Ann says, what about the person at the county fair doing a demo and someone in the audience accidentally becomes hypnotized? Does that really happen?
Yes, it does.
It
That's
really does?
yes, and I can speak to this.
Wait, can you get it a little closer to your
Oh, I'm sorry.
microphone?
Is that are we better?
Yeah,
Hold on.
there you go.
If pardon me, I'm a little tangled here.
He's tangled in blue. I couldn't resist.
That's what they call, if you can hear me better now,
Yeah.
that's what they call stage hypnosis. Now,
Okay.
there are different techniques and things involved, but I will tell you, um, giving away my age here, in 1978, I believe, when I was in college in Westchester, New York, we had a professor who would do a demonstration for um, a charity. I forget exactly what the charity was. And 2,000 people would show up, and he would do the hypnosis on stage where he had people petting imaginary rabbits, and
Hmm.
all that stuff that you would see. Now, they started videotaping it, and they realized when they would show the videotape to some of the classes, some people would get hypnotized by it.
Be darned. Huh.
Right. So yeah, that can happen. I don't know how often. I don't know how you'd have to be pretty zoned in on them.
Yeah.
It's not like you walk past and it magnetically pulls you in. I don't
Right,
think that
right. You have
happens,
to, yeah.
but yeah, it's sure.
Interesting. Wanda Mann says, do people that have memory issues use this type of therapy?
If we're talking about past life regression specifically, maybe, but hypnosis, definitely.
Okay.
And I will revert back to my one of my good friends who is a client, uh, my friend Craig, who has multiple sclerosis and has a number of issues, including short-term memory loss.
Wow. Wow.
I did one 1 hour session with him. He had tremendous pain because he had hip surgery, and
Mm.
we not only relieved his pain, he had so much trouble with his short-term memory. We actually were able to retrieve some of it. Now, we didn't spend a lot of time on it, but to this day, it's actually a year ago, almost to the day.
Yeah.
And to this day, he can still remember some of the buzzwords that I gave him a year ago.
That's amazing.
So you can untangle some of that.
Wow. So
Uh,
Lisa Phillips says, does it work long term for weight loss? I think I gain weight for protection.
it does. That the short answer, it does. Now, that does not mean that you don't have to work at it.
Mhm.
Um, and I don't. I'm hoping this doesn't sound insulting, but you don't get hypnotized, lose 10 pounds, and then start eating 3 cheeseburgers a day and expect to lose weight. And so a lot of people do that. I mean, I'm saying a lot of people. We all
Right, but and I
sometimes
think in this
fall back,
case,
but
since she's aware of that for protection, to keeping weight on for protection, then probably going age regression. Was there a time that you needed protection, you didn't get it, or going back into a previous life, or could be just in this life? I mean, frankly, a lot of issues are answered in this life, and then there are those that really need to go back even further.
yeah, and protection is a huge part of some people's weight gain. It
Hmm.
does go to trauma, and they feel like if there is room, if there's a buffer between you and me, it's my weight, and that keeps you at a distance and it keeps you at arm's length, and I'm not threatened.
Now, I don't understand this, but I'm going to read it. Diana Blank says, I was in a group of friends where a guest was a hypnotist. She agreed to put a couple volunteers under. I did not volunteer, but she specifically called me out. I've never met this woman. She insisted I leave the room because I was very subject to hypnosis suggestions and she could not handle me in a group. She would not start until I left. I did never ever spoke to her or had any, any conversation with her. I have no idea what was going on with that one, Diana. I'm sorry you had that experience. Sounds miserable. Sorry about that. So, Beth Glomsky, Kelly and Bill, our phobias, part of our fears, can block us and block our chakras.
That's
Oh,
a you question.
absolutely. That's absolutely, absolutely. Our phobias are definitely part of our, of our fear, and we come to this world, we come to this dimension to move through fear, that realize it's an illusion and move through it. And one of the techniques that Bill does as a hypnotist is to help unblock and release fears. So does it block your chakras? Yes, it does. Thanks, Beth. It does. It blocks chakras. Yeah. Yep, it sure does. So that very interesting. So when people come to you, they don't could they make an appointment, I guess, to say, I like to do a past life regression, and you would start moving them from where they are now, maybe back a few years, and then their psyche takes over?
Yeah, that's a big part of it, and sometimes it happens really fast. I mean, it can happen in 20
Yeah.
minutes, and I try to leave room for them to explore it as much as they want, because again, what I try to do is I try to set the client up so that they know what they're getting themselves into. I don't do any sucker punches. I don't have any preconceived idea of what you should be doing or saying. And the
Right.
first order of business is to get you relaxed and open and know that it's a safe place. Um,
Perfect.
and what happens sometimes is it goes so fast, and it honestly goes so well,
Wow.
that someone will say to me, "Oh, it's like you're reading my mind." And I have to say to them, "I'm not reading your mind. I'm reading your body. I'm reading your eyes. I'm reading your posture, your facial expressions, your speech.
Hmm.
That you're giving me a lot of information,
Right,
and
right.
we're just going in the right direction. I'm just keeping you on course."
Ardelia from Australia says, is it possible that fear of death may mean that you've had a bad experience with death in a past life? Yes, certainly a possibility, Ardelia. Not necessarily, but it's a possibility. You also may have had a family that talked about fear and fear of dying, and they may have had that in the religion or in something about that. So it's not necessarily past life, but it certainly could be, which is a good question. Karen Bennett says, I've heard hypnosis, Bill, can be used during dental or medical treatments, maybe to manage pain and fear. Could it be used to manage pain for, say, a terminal illness?
As far as managing pain, yes, and I I will say that it's not that I've dealt with someone with a terminal illness. I just mentioned my friend Craig, who had pretty serious surgeries, and we managed
Mhm.
his pain. Uh, the managing pain in a dentist office, I've done myself.
Wow.
Um, I just went to the dentist last week, and I did a little bit of it. I wasn't having anything too terrible, you know, done
Hmm.
to me, but uh, I self hypnosis works pretty well, and there are several different terms. Love analgesia, and there's a couple of different terms that are different levels of, can I feel the touch but I don't feel the pain? Can I not even feel somebody touch me? And that's kind of a long explanation, but yeah, the idea of pain is pain,
So,
and
and
you
Sue
can.
Lopeman asks, is it possible to hypnotize yourself? And what you're saying is probably yes.
Yeah, for the most part, all
Oh,
hypnosis is self-hypnosis. The
oh.
the little hypnosis joke is, I have 10,000 clients and I've never hypnotized one of them. They all hypnotize themselves.
Okay, that's good. Susie
I can
writes
show you
us,
how to do that.
oh,
When you call me, I can show you how to do that.
Susie Wright says, what is the difference between meditation and hypnosis?
And not much.
Interesting. Not
Um,
much.
there are
Yeah.
different definitions, different applications. Um, when you Guided imagery
Hmm.
is a big part of hypnosis. The guided imagery, just for those who might not be familiar with the phrase, it's pretty much self-explanatory. That's when I'll say to you, relax, and you're drifting on a cloud. And that's not enough in and of itself. So I get you to a spot where you're actually feeling the breeze, you're feeling the sunlight on your face.
Hmm.
We get very, very descriptive. You can hear the birds in the distance, you can hear the water crashing, right? Now, that's essentially what they do in meditation. Now,
Right.
the difference is, I guess, if you were to make it, put a finer point on this, is hypnosis is targeted,
Mm.
whereas meditation is clearing your mind and bringing you to a
Hmm.
relaxed state and being able to focus and relax at the same time. And hypnosis is a little more targeted in the sense that we're doing that for a specific reason, right? To
Interesting.
get you to stop smoking, to
Right.
get you to lose weight, fear of heights, on and on.
Yeah. Lisa G says, "What's the farthest back a client has gone in time?"
Wow. Well, I haven't looked at the Guinness Book of World Records, but in my experience, I think is hopefully what we're talking about. Because
Yeah.
um, uh, I will couple this with another one of the myths.
Mhm.
One of the myths of past life regression is some people have said to me, "How come everybody thinks they're famous when they go back in
Right.
time?" That's not true. It's almost never true in my
Yeah.
estimation. But I have one particular client who uh, went back to, I guess, the Egyptian times, and I thought that was pretty good shooting.
Hmm.
But I had someone else go back to where they didn't know who and what they were, in the sense that they weren't sure if they were human.
So you have had that before.
Yeah. So this is
Okay.
where it gets way outside the box, right?
Yeah.
Because
Well, in my world, that's normal. I
yeah,
call that
right,
normal in my world because
right.
there's a great book called Souls on Earth, and
Hmm.
she worked with Michael Newton, who did Life Between Lives,
Yeah, yeah,
and through hypnosis, she would work with people who would come to her that had been on all kinds of galaxies, and they would come back and they would report everything that they had done, their mission, and it's pretty wild stuff. And I love hearing about that too. So they can
yeah.
go back and go back
Oh, I mean, I
and go
recently.
forward. I'm wondering if people can go forward. Probably.
Well, that's interesting too. Yeah, I've heard you use the term star seed,
Hmm.
and I had a person just the other day who asked me if I did past life regression, and I said yes, and she jumped right in with both feet because she said, I'm happy. It's not a,
Hmm.
a depressed situation. It's very positive, but she always felt that she was not from here.
Hmm.
And she used the term star seed. And again, I knew the term, but I didn't use it. She did. And we traced that back, and it was incredibly comforting for her.
Yeah. Oh, I bet it is.
Yeah.
So this is a great question from Steve Kinnicky. Is writing or doing art or playing a musical instrument a form of self-hypnosis? Great question, Steve.
Um, I guess depending on your definitions and the depth, I will tell you, listening is certainly hypnosis. Uh, I have, Kelly's been kind enough to talk about my musical career. I have said from the very beginning, the idea of getting the vibe of 20,000 people in an arena
Mm.
is undeniable. Uh, if you were to say that those people were hypnotized, everybody's of the same mind, right? Everybody's in a trance, so to speak. It's the best possible trance you could ever envision. And so that part of it, yes. As far as playing, I will absolutely tell you that playing on stage, or even in a studio with headphones, or in your own, if sitting on the edge of your bed, it's absolutely positive, and it can absolutely transport you. There's no two ways
Oh,
about that. Matter of fact,
right.
if you're not being transported, you might be doing something wrong.
Wow.
It
Right.
should make you feel something that you've never felt before if you're doing it right. And that doesn't mean hitting the right notes, and it doesn't mean being a professional. It
Mhm.
should stir something very deep in you if you sit down with an instrument.
Mm. It's very interesting. Um, and if people want to reach you, they can reach you at bchypno.com.
Yeah,
bchypno.com.
yeah, it's my initials and short for hypnotist. Um,
Okay.
and you can also go to Bill Cinque hypnotist.com, but that's a lot of letters. But it'll take you to the same place. It'll take you to the same place.
Right. Wow. I mean, this is so fascinating so if people want to come to see you, they can see you for any issue really that they have that's preventing them from moving forward in life.
Yes, and
Whether it's from this lifetime or a previous lifetime.
well, yeah. I mean, I take great pride in saying that you can't get too far outside the box for me.
Mhm,
You know, I've had so many people come to me for one issue,
mhm.
smoking, and we clear that up. They stop smoking. I had somebody that smoked a pack a day for 50 years, and in
Wow.
7 sessions they were done.
Wow.
And I said, okay, that's great. And they said, well, do you mind if I kind of hang around and can we do some more sessions? And I said, sure. She said, well, I didn't want to mention this because they're a little more hesitant to talk to me about things like past life regression because those are
Mm,
the things that not everybody understands.
right.
Um, and I have to repeat myself that, like I said at the top of the show, I don't know that I've ever asked somebody if they wanted to do it. They come to me and ask me to do it. And sometimes they kind of take the back door. They
Mhm.
don't say it up front. They kind of wiggle their way into it. But yeah, it works for a lot of different things. It works for a lot of different hurdles and a
Mhm.
lot of
Oh, I
different
would think it
challenges.
would be. So Barb Kennedy says, curious if Bill ever had a client who had experiences on other planets or all experiences Earth-based. And that's what we were just talking about. So
Yeah.
yes,
Y-
I mean, it sounds like you have.
Yeah, I have one still
Mhm,
had a very, very vivid um, feeling,
mhm,
thought, memory, how whatever you want to call it, that they came from someplace else and came here and they want to go back and forth.
yeah,
And to
yeah.
them, it was, I mean, I was born and raised in New York and I live in California now. I go back and forth. It
Mhm.
doesn't have to be for any, it doesn't have to be for any huge
Right, right,
reason. In their mind, okay, it's time to go back for a little while and visit.
right.
Okay,
Well, and
why
that's
not?
really that's the expression that I when I hear from people from that have that I know are star seeds, that that's what they'll tell me.
Yeah.
So interesting. So people one woman said, Joanne says, I have to say strongly, it seems as though I've met Bill before. You must be an empath. Very weird feeling. So it sounds like I don't know if you know Joanne Wilson, but it sounds like she has met you.
Well, I'm if I did, I'm hoping I was pleasant, and
May have been at a concert.
well, that could be that could be.
hmm and Rosie Miller says, I have experienced past life regression. I got as far back as the 13th century. I had a lot of interesting experiences within villages, on sailing ships. Don't like sailing, which explained a lot of interesting behaviors. I mean, that is something that can happen. I mean, it may explain why you don't like water. It may explain why you don't like heights. It may explain why you don't like your mother or your father or any of that. I mean, you might go back and so, I mean, in my experience of past lives, it has been, I mean, some of it is uncomfortable. Some of it can be. Some of it, I'm wondering when you're working the person back, can you give them say a positive, something positive when they're being regressed?
I think that was part of the coming to a conclusion when
Mm,
I put it in air quotes because when you get to that spot and you
mhm,
realize uh, the client realizes that I'm wondering why I'm so hard on myself.
mm,
In a past life, I I wasted some time, and when I got home, I found out that my mom
yeah,
died 20 minutes ago. Had I
mm,
not stopped to grab an ice cream cone, I would have been home. Maybe I could have helped her. Maybe I could have saved her. Maybe I could have said goodbye.
mm,
Right now, that in today's memory
mhm.
means I'm going to be so hard on myself. I'm going to be an hour early for everything.
Right,
I'm going to beat myself
right.
up if I'm a little
Hmm.
bit drawing outside the lines. That's not healthy.
Yeah.
I don't think anybody benefits from that, right? So when you do that, it kind of untangles it, and sometimes it's kind of on the spot and it's kind of immediate that
Mm,
they cleared it up for themselves. And it came to
mm.
that again. I use the word conclusion.
Yeah, no, I like that. I like that. Um, Robin Kane Kirby says, "Is there a reason why the stair descending method works better on some, and the cloud floating method works better on others when doing a hypnosis session?" So I don't know the difference.
Okay, what a great question, Robin.
Hmm.
Um, these are two of my favorite scripts. And as to why one is better than the other, um, there's a couple of ways of answering that. And I use both of these all the time, really all the time. Um, some of it depends on the language. So, for instance, I'll tell you one of the things that I do. I've worked with actors and dancers
Hmm.
coming down the staircase. For those of you, again, I'm not assuming everybody knows what this is. What you do is you have somebody at the top of a staircase in their mind, and under hypnosis, you walk them down the staircase and you're on your way to a destination, whether that destination at the bottom of the stairs is losing weight, stopping smoking, whatever it is. I worked with actor, dancer. I got her halfway down the stairs, and I said, "You're not walking down the stairs anymore. You're dancing down the stairs.
Mm.
You're a ballerina. You're doing pirouettes on the stairs." Okay. That language was very effective. When I was talking about myself doing the cloud thing, when I was the client, again, got to give a tip of the hat to my good friend Jeanette. The word that she used that put it over the top for me was, she said, "Allow yourself to feel the cloud."
Mm.
Because I'm an alpha dog, I can be sometimes a controlling personality. Had somebody said, "Just do this," or "Now you're going," I can be resistant. But the language that was used was "allow yourself," and that changed
Ah,
everything.
I
So,
bet.
so those two, staircase and the cloud, are both really effective. Sometimes it's how you tailor it to the client that makes the difference.
Mm. Wow, I understand. So you would tailor it per individual.
Yes, yes, which is why when we do the free consultation,
Yeah.
we ask some basic questions, because they're would I take somebody who has a fear of heights? Would I put them on a cloud? Maybe not.
Mhm.
Maybe I would. Maybe the challenge would be that what they want. But
So
we'd have to give
Robin
that a little
says,
look.
"Thank you so much, Bill. That made so much sense. Thanks for clearing that up." So when you say a free consultation, before you work with somebody, do you have a consult with them? And
Absolutely, absolutely. What happens is this: anybody who goes to my website, there's what they call a client agreement form. The client agreement form basically is something you fill out. It's the same thing you would fill out at a dentist office or a doctor's office. And if there's any information there that you don't want to fill out, that's understandable. But just, are you on any medication? Have you done this before? Have you been
Mhm.
hypnotized before? And it's the understanding that, I'm not a medical doctor, I'm not a psychiatrist, I'm not a dietitian.
Mhm.
I'm not going to tell you to do push-ups and sit-ups. I'm not going to prescribe anything. But the understanding is, I'm a hypnotist who's going to help you relieve the anxiety around these very, very specific things. I'm very careful as to not to step outside the box. And if you contact me and say, "Yeah, this all sounds good," we do the free consultation. And if you say you want to work with me, you fill out that client form and send it to me. And that's when our professional relationship begins.
Interesting. Okay. So, and in a past life regression, they could come and see you once, or maybe if they need another session, they would, I guess it would be determined after the first session.
I've had people that have I've only had one client that's come to me once. Most of
Okay.
them come 4, 6, and 8 times. I have a couple that have come to me for a long time about a lot of different things, because they just feel really refreshed and they feel that they're
Ah,
building on the other sessions.
right.
So I have people come to me for a lot more than that.
Wow. Gosh. Well, Bill, we've got questions for days and days, but everybody is loving this. And if anybody wants to reach you, again, it's billcinquehypnotist.com or bchypno.com, bchypno.com. And Bill will see you for an age regression, past life regression, or just a session.
Just come by and say hello. Yeah.
Say hello. No makeup, which is a great thing.
Yeah.
And just read. Everybody is fascinated by this. So, Bill, thank you so much for being on the show today. And everybody, will see you Monday with James. We're going to be doing a seance. Well, we're not doing a seance. We're talking about seances. I have to make sure I said that right. But thanks so much for joining us tonight.
Thank
Bill.
you for having me, Kellee. And thank you, everybody, for tuning in.
Bye.
You've been listening to Ask Me Anything, featuring spiritual medium and psychotherapist Kellee White.